What if my mom walked in and I was dressed as a news anchor? She's walked in on worse. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Morgan M. Steele. I'm an author, and I'm here to take you on a little trip down memory lane today, through my past to my present, and tell you all about my journey as a writer, an author, and a person. Okay, that was like really pretentious. Basically, I've been writing for a while, as you will see, and I thought it might be interesting for my readers, for fellow writers, and maybe even for aspiring authors who want to get into the scene to see, you know, where I started and where I ended up. Let's get into it. If any of that interests you, stick around and get comfy. This is going to be a long one. As always, my link tree is linked in my description down below. If any of my books that I'm talking about sound interesting to you, the link is in that link tree, but I'll also have a separate link just to my Amazon stuff. All of my books are available in paperback, ebook, and until April they'll be available on Kindle Unlimited. But I'm pulling them from their catalog for other reasons that I can get into if you want me to, but I won't today. If you have any questions at all about anything I talk about today, or anything in general, in terms of my writing and my writing process, feel free to ask me in the comments below. If I don't answer it down there, I'll maybe cover it in a future video. That said, grab a snack, get some water. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. I feel like a Rugrats character, and I look like a minion. These are not anything like the dorky little glasses I wore when I was actually in elementary school. I'll see if I can find a picture of that to... But yeah, I think to get really into the heart of it, we have to go back to the very beginning. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly where that was. I've been writing for fun basically as long as I can remember. And additionally, for as long as I've been able to use the family computer. I do remember, however, that this journey was kickstarted by two things. One, I went to an event at my local library where Jonathan Rand, who writes children's horror books, a la Goosebumps kind of, he was talking about like his writing journey and, you know, what got him into writing. And I was like, oh, I could do that probably, but I'm a kid, you know? I'm too young for that. I'll worry about that later. And then number two, there was a young author that came to my school for a school visit. I was actually friends with his brother in high school. So, small world, you know? He came, and he was like a couple years older than me, and was talking about the books that he had written, and his parents had helped him, like, get them ready for publication and that kind of thing. And I was just like, oh, I never thought of that. Like, I could start writing now? So those are, like, those two things were the catalyst that kind of got this snowball rolling. I want to say I started up around the 3rd grade. That would have been when my language skills caught up with my little imagination at the time. I think when I was in 1st and 2nd grade, I probably would have been too young to be, you know, writing anything of substance. I don't remember everything I wrote back then, and I don't have any of it anymore that I could find. I don't have any files, I don't have any papers, aside from the stuff that I worked on like in school as school activities. Files were probably lost when we switched computers, and at the time no one thought to back up my work, including myself. I didn't know I didn't know how computers worked. I was 7. So, well, in the 3rd grade I would have been... How old are 3rd graders? 8, 9? I think it's like 8 and 9. I don't know. I do remember, however, that I wrote these things. The first, very cute. I wrote a story about myself joining the Teen Titans, and that dream came true, obviously. I remember I wrote a self-insert Rainbow Magic fanfiction. Rainbow Magic is the book series about fairies. There were a million of them. They were written by Daisy Meadows, and I was obsessed with them for my entire childhood. And I also, this is notable because this is the first like original work that I can think of that I remember writing. It was a story about a witch, and her name was Angela, and everything she sang was a spell. She didn't know she was a witch, and she like sang something out loud and it happened, and she was like, oh my god. And I remember I wrote maybe like 5 or 6 chapters of that and then, you know, gave up inevitably. Granted, at the time I didn't know what fanfiction was. Obviously I was like 8. I didn't even know how to use the internet except to play Webkinz and dress-up games. So I wasn't out there like reading fan fiction. I didn't know that that was a thing, but it was just something that, you know, kind of came to me naturally. I was like, oh, I would like to be in these worlds. And I didn't know that you couldn't do that. I didn't know the legality of like characters and intellectual property and owning them or not owning them. So yeah, no, there's more fan fiction though. Just the next phase. When I was writing while I was really young, no one really like took me seriously. I get it. I was this smart ass little kid typing away my shitty little stories, but my parents didn't think anything would come of it. Our family friends didn't, and I don't think most of the people at school did either. I don't think my friends at the time really like, you know, knew that this was something that was going to catch on with me. And I don't blame them because, you know, I personally didn't either. It was just something I was doing for fun, you know. It was a hobby like anything else, and I didn't know that it would stick with me for my whole life, you know. I thought it would be something that comes and goes, like my Littlest Pet Shop toys. I don't know where those are. I had a bunch. I don't know where any of those are. I assume they got given to my little cousins, but I don't remember. But yeah, I kept at it, and I'm really glad I did. So with that, we move on to middle school. That's Axel, by the way. He's a staple of the channel at this point.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Welcome to middle school. This is my Captain America shirt. I have like a lot of these. This is the one that was clean. So middle school is where things really started to pick up for me. When I was in middle school, I wrote a lot. It was my main hobby. I still played like some video games. I was on the volleyball team. I did youth theater for a little bit. You know, writing was the thing that kind of held me together at the time. It was the thing I kept coming back to. You know, even when I quit volleyball, I would still write. Even when I, you know, wasn't doing theater anymore, I still wrote. It just was, you know, the thing I kept coming back to. And when I was in middle school, that was when it really formed for me. Even though I wrote in elementary school, I didn't start actually caring about it until middle school. I do actually have some of these projects still. I forgot to grab them before I started recording. I'll get those 1 second. Okay, so remember how I said I didn't have any of my elementary school writing? I'm going through my middle school stuff. I just found the Teen Titans fanfiction I wrote. As you can see, it's all one paragraph. It's a surprisingly small font size because some of the stuff I have for middle school is in like size 20 font. I don't know why. Chapter 6, Chapter 5, Chapter 7. They're in a great order. It looks like I am missing some of this. I'm surprised I even have it at all. So there's that. If you want me to get drunk and read that, I might. Yeah, what I'm talking about is like big font size. I don't know why I started doing that. When I was writing in 12 font when I was in elementary school. All the chapters are like, there's no page breaks between chapters. This is called Once Upon a Dream, because at the time I was a lucid dreamer, and I still am, but that was when I like figured out what it was and like learned how to do it. And okay, so there's 2 of them. I was like, why am I writing as a 21-year-old in this? When I was a 12, but this is from a different character's perspective. Okay, anyway, there's a lot of this. Same story over and over and over again. Basically, there's this girl, Jade. She has these dreams about these brothers that she like doesn't have in real life, and so every time she has a dream, she keeps trying to find them and like figure out what's going on, why they're connected, and you know, they they figure that out. But there's 2 books. The first one, that was the plot, Once Upon a Dream. The second one is called Once Upon a Nightmare, and she finally has all her brothers, but there's this evil girl named Amethyst. I don't think I intentionally named both of them after gemstones. I don't think I knew that Jade was a gemstone at the time. So yeah, this evil girl, Amethyst, comes and just like tries to take over her life. She brainwashes one of her brothers, like that kind of thing. Maybe I will get drunk and read these too. I don't know. We'll see. These are the things I think I wrote like first-ish. This would have been like in the 6th grade, maybe. Yeah, so those exist. That's my tip, is like, if you can, and if you're in the position to, keep everything that you can, like everything you write, even if you can't keep it physically like this. Keep it on a flash drive, keep it on a hard drive, like keep it somewhere, because later down the line when you're my age, you might be like trying to rewrite something you wrote as a child. And you don't have it anymore because you were like, oh, well, that's garbage. I won't ever need it. But you might. So hold on to everything. I always say that when I go to school visits. I'm like, I know when you guys graduate high school, you may or may not look fondly back on the things you write in high school, but keep them anyway. You never know. I got hiccups because I'm drinking orange high C. And then 2012 came and everything changed. And this is, of course, because of the Avengers. So, in 2012, as you know, the first Avengers movie came out and altered the course of my life forever. But as a 7th or 8th grader, maybe both, I wrote like 13 Avengers Wattpad stories. They were about the next generation of Avengers, which I deemed the Junior Avengers because I knew that the Young Avengers was already something in the comics. They were all OCs of mine, and I'm not going to say their names because I am repurposing some of them currently in upcoming projects of mine. But some of the characters included Captain America's daughter, his son, his other son, and his other son, who were all made by Hydra, who were doing cloning experiments with Captain America's DNA. Howard Stark's lab assistant from the 1940s, who fell in love with Cap's daughter and came back to the future with her. I don't know, I saw it in the script. I had a knockoff Elsa character who was shadowing Bruce Banner and literally had a Frozen-based storyline, so that part was obviously in like 2013, so that was like later in the series, maybe book 7 or 8. Albert Martian, who I'm name dropping because I've already reused him. His name is now Brian Martin, and he's in Lost and Found. He's one of my favorite characters, by the way. But I always forget that's where he started. Like, he's so different now. There was an alien princess who got low-key adopted by Peter Parker, who was not in the MCU yet. I just kind of grabbed Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker, and plopped him in the MCU. And then there were a lot of others. There were too many to keep track of. I know I had some original, like, X-Men in there, but I don't remember anything about them. I remember, like, when I was writing it, I was trying to keep it canon. Like, everything that had to do with the actual canon characters, I was trying to keep consistent with the movies, which was hard because those things kept changing. Specifically, I had Clint and Natasha together because, you know, of their chemistry in the first Avengers movie, and I shipped it at the time. Who didn't? Then Age of Ultron came out, and it was like, oh, he has, like, a family and a wife, and so then I was, like, scrambling to explain why that was occurring, and it was just, like, exhausting. That was about when I was finishing up that series. That would have been my freshman or sophomore year of high school. But yeah, I felt like a TV writer that was like constantly like retconning things. Yeah, the last thing I remember writing, and I don't think I finished this arc, but I was on like a summer camp arc where all of the kids went to summer camp. They were counselors, and they were like mentoring like kids with superpowers. And there were 4 sections of the camp. There was one for the Avengers, one for the Guardians of the Galaxy, one for the X-Men, and one for the Fantastic Four. Because one of my OCs was the son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. Forgot about him. I think his name was Jake, because they do have kids in the comics, just not in any of the movies. Sometime after that, I started writing my first series of original works, which I called Through. You know, it's super descriptive. But it was because all of the titles of the books started with the word through. So, for example, the first one is called Through the Mist. I found all of these files on my computer. I'll pop a picture up here. I might keep bringing it back to show you like when they're from. But they're all from 2013 to 2015. So I don't know. I don't think I wrote any of them in high school, but I might have like opened them up and edited the files a little bit in high school. Through the Mist, which we will come back to several times in this video. It was about a fairy named Lexi, which I believe was short for Alexis, and a ghost named Ben. And they were like kind of in love with each other. They were friends. They were both around 13 because I always wrote my characters like the same age as myself, and I still kind of do to an extent. Ben was like haunting Lexi's attic. He had died in the 90s, I think. He was just like up there, and she was a fairy. I don't remember if her parents knew that or not, or if that was just something that was like happening to her. I know she had 2 best friends who were Nikki and Nicole, who were like living in her attic at one point. In one of the versions. I was like obsessed with the movie Casper at the time, which I think really, really comes through in the writing. But I was also obsessed with the book Forevermore by Cindy Miles, which I actually I have on the shelf. I'll be right back. One second. This is Forevermore by Cindy Miles. I was obsessed with this book as a teenager. I loaned my only copy of it to a friend in high school, like my freshman year, and he never gave it back. I did ask him for it, and he was like, oh yeah, I do have that, don't I? And then he never gave it back to me. So I got this copy a couple of years ago on Amazon. I got lucky because it's like mostly out of print now. It's really good, really cute. Highly recommend it. Like if you're a teenager, I ate this shit up when I was 12. So you might love it. When did this come out? 2013. 2013? Yeah, so that must have been when I wrote Through the Mist then, because it was definitely after reading this. It's about a Scottish ghost boy. But yeah, it's really good. She also writes like adult novels as well, like adult romance ghost novels, and I have some of them on my shelf. I haven't read them, but I was like, and I think she has references. Like, her characters from one of her other books appear in Forevermore to, like, talk to Ivy, who's the main character. So Through the Mist is one of those things that I keep revisiting. I keep pulling chunks off of. So, for example, Ben, the ghost from that story, I stole his name, and I used it for Benjamin Kim in O Positive, and that is where I got the name Ben, is from this book that I wrote when I was 12. But he's a human, he's not a ghost. The ghost thing, in general, is something that I'm kind of repurposing in the novel I'm writing right now. So the only thing that hasn't been used in anything is Lexi. And I've tried, but I don't know, she just doesn't really fit anymore as she is. Here's the files. I went in and I looked at the word counts. Through the Mist was almost 15,000 words. It was like 14,999. Through the Mirror was 16,000 words. Through the Dreams was 16.1 thousand words. Through the Changes was 12,000 words. Through the Pages was 20,000 words. And then Through the Woods, I remember that's the one where I stopped. It was 7,000 words. I kind of remember it was about like twin sisters. One lived in this group of witches that was only awake during the day, and the other lived in a group of witches that was only awake during the night, and they were like constantly like circling each other in like this magical forest. I kind of do like the concept of that, but it just hasn't reemerged in my writing. And I honestly, like, I don't know what order these books go in, and when I was like looking through the files, I couldn't figure it out. I'm sure I could sit down and like actually read through them and figure out what's happening and who's who, but it's more work than I was willing to put in for the middle school section of this video. So again, maybe someday, maybe with some wine. On the side, at the time, I was also writing silly little short stories for my spelling class. We had to like incorporate our words with their definitions into things. And so I wrote stories about SpongeBob SquarePants, because of course I did, and the Blue Moose, which was a little plush guy that we had in our classroom. He was like kind of our class mascot. We played with him when we were doing like capture the flag, like he was the flag, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And so basically I would take all our vocab words from the week and write a story about SpongeBob and Blue Moose, like going on a little adventure, and all of the words would be in there. I remember the last one I wrote, it was a 3-part Christmas special about the Blue Moose and SpongeBob and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer saving Christmas. So that was fun. And I do have them. I found them. I didn't think I still had these, but they were in the folder when I was going through it. This is why we keep our things. This specific one is about SpongeBob meeting the Blue Moose in Gettysburg. So oh, he went to Hogwarts? Oh my god. Oh, there's a Walking Dead spin-off. Oh my god. And Bilbo Baggins is in it. Which segues so nicely, actually, because I was going to bring up the fact that middle school is when I got really into Tolkien stuff, because we were reading The Hobbit in my 8th grade class, so we could go see the second movie when it came out. And then we got snowed out of that, so we couldn't go. But my friends and I were, like, obsessed. Like, obsessed with those movies. And then we got into The Lord of the Rings as well. It's not really important right now, but it will be later. Yeah, also I want to say that compared to elementary school, Middle school was when my peers and teachers actually started taking me seriously. A couple of really great teachers let me like read my stories to the class, and then some of my classmates got into writing too and would write their own stories and got to read them in front of the class, and it was like this little like writing revolution that I got to take part in, and that was awesome. I still don't think any of them knew quite yet where I was going with my writing career, and I don't think any of them could until the next part of my journey, which is my high school years. Not a Sims 4 plug. I'm reading this Blue Moon story. This paragraph, I guess you could consider like a time capsule for my entire middle school career. Standing in the room was not only Santa, Blue Moose, SpongeBob, and Rudolph, but waiting in there were Carl Grimes, Bilbo Baggins, Finn the Human, and a man with a block body. He was wearing a teal shirt and jeans. He was holding a block of dirt and said his name was Steve. Blue Moose recognized him, but no one else seemed to. So there's that. You know, I don't know what it says about me that at the ripe old age of 23, I still have a closet Dipper Pines cosplay. I did just buy this shooting star to paint Mabel's colors to put on my wall. So, yeah, so as I said previously, some of my middle school writing carries on into my high school writing career. I wrote the last of the Junior Avengers series on Wattpad and then quietly deleted them a few years later. I dropped my Through series and I dabbled in some other stuff before anything really stuck. The thing with the Junior Avengers, I deleted them. They are not on Wattpad anymore. They are gone. They died with my old Wattpad account. So if you read them and you somehow found this video, so sorry about that. You know, I died inside every time I thought about them, so they just had to go. And I do kind of regret it. I don't have those. I don't think they're anywhere. Which sucks. This is the list of files that I found that I wrote like during that period of time. I was writing a little bit of everything, dabbling in all sorts of different genres. I wanted to rewrite Through the Mist at the time and I didn't. So let's dig into the list. So first of all, we have Invasion and Alien Love Story, which is definitely a working title. I do that sometimes where instead of like thinking of an actual title, I just put in like what it is. So for example, O Positive was Untitled Vampire Book. So, you know, that's something I still do. But anyway, they were both, Invasion and Alien Love Story were both spawned from a CW show that I was obsessed with at the time. It was called Star-Crossed. It was like Romeo and Juliet, but with aliens, and Matt Lanter was in it. So, he voices Anakin on Star Wars The Clone Wars. He was in Pitch Perfect 3. So there's that. But yeah, he played a hot alien dude called Roman. I never finished either of these stories. The largest file, Alien Love Story, which I started in early 2017, clocks in at 21,000 words and ends with a chapter header for chapter 19, Broken Hearts and Brash Decisions. Which sounds dramatic, but I have no idea what that was supposed to be about. I don't have an outline. I don't have like anything left that would have suggested what came next. I don't know how it was supposed to end. I don't know anything about it. The main characters of the story were named Layla and Zoran with a Z. Z-O-R-A-N. Which sounds very suspiciously similar to Roman. My aliens were called Lunars, even though they weren't from the moon. And they had telepathy, but for the most part they looked pretty human. They had blue fingertips, they had like unnaturally blue glowing eyes, they had pointy ears, they had like a diamond mark on their cheek that's like mentioned a couple times. In one of the first chapters, I had Zoran note how cute it was that Layla was blushing, and he suggested that this was like a very human thing to do, that Lunars don't blush for whatever reason. And then like literally in the next chapter he's blushing, like his face turns red over something, and I was like, wow. Queen of continuity, obviously. I was reading through some of it when I was writing the script, and it actually has really strong zombies vibes. It's kind of written in that tone, and most of the plot surrounds like the integration of these lunars into human society, which is giving very much the zombies being integrated into human society in Seabrook. But also, that is what Starcrossed was doing as well. Like, this is just a thinly veiled Starcrossed fanfiction, because that was the whole point of that show, is that the aliens, I think they were called Atrians, lived in a fenced-off portion of the city, and they wanted to be integrated into human society. So, again, all three of them hit the same beats. And also, like, the writing of this story was not bad when I was reading it, which makes sense because February of 2017 would have been 3 months before Lost and Found was published. So I was writing other substantial stuff at the time. So the next ones, which also go together, are It's All in the Book and The Book of Truth, which are both Once Upon a Time knockoffs. Are we noticing a pattern here? However, this one had all of the characters as teenagers instead of adults, like in Once Upon a Time. The main character, her name was Ella. She was based on Cinderella, obviously. Her grandmother was supposed to be her fairy godmother, and her love interest was the human version of Jacques. That Jacques, the mouse. I remember he had this like dramatic backstory where he was like a prince that got turned into a mouse, but yeah, she was with Jacques, she wasn't with Prince Charming. And I don't remember if they were one-to-one, like if Prince Charming got turned into the mouse in the story, I don't remember. Grace's Angel is another one I wrote that year, working title. That was kind of fun. This is 2015, so that would have been during like my freshman year. I remember talking about this one with my best friend at the time. It was about a girl named Grace. She was half angel and half demon, but she grew up on Earth, and so basically heaven and hell both wanted her, but she had to pick which one to go to, and so each place sent like a boy to try to win her over, basically win her heart, bring her home, quote unquote. And so I don't remember either of the boys' names. The demon was probably something like Damon, because I wasn't that creative, and I wasn't watching Vampire Diaries yet, so it wouldn't have been after him. And so the demon boy, he like loved all of her, you know what I mean? Like, whereas the angel boy loved her despite her flaws, you know? And so I think she was gonna end up with him, but I didn't finish it, so I don't know. And then, finally, this is the notable one on this list. It's the first iteration of The Hunters, which is crazy. It's about Sage Hunter, who is the daughter in a family of monster hunters. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because her and her family wound up in O Positive years later. It came out in 2020. And I'd been trying to tell her story for a long time, and so I think it just kind of worked to introduce them on the side of something else happening. So I do at some point want to give The Hunters a spin-off, and we'll touch upon that again later. I haven't yet, but I would like to, and this is the first iteration of that trying to happen, even though it was like its own original thing at the time. And her name was Sage in that too, like I kept that name from high school. There was also a project called The Witch's Curse, which was just through the mist again, but Lexi was a witch instead. And Ben and Lexi like really didn't get along in that version, so we were getting some like enemies to lovers, but that like never got finished either. And then I gave writing a Christmas book a try. It was called Once Upon a Christmas Curse. I tried it twice in 2017 and 2018. It was like a Christmas Avengers lineup of sorts. Santa Claus's daughter was in there. There was an elf that like blew up everything he made. There were modern versions of the Sugar Plum Fairy / Clara, and then the Nutcracker as well. Jack Frost was in there. The Ice Queen was in there. Like a whole bunch of Christmas characters basically, but they were modern and like young adults and trying to save Christmas. So, and then there was also a project I wrote during my freshman year that I have lost to time and Google Docs probably. It was about like a magic school, and there were 6 sorcerers, there were 6 elements of magic, so each of them fit into one of them. It was like the classic 4 elements, fire, earth, water, air, but then you also had light magic and shadow magic, and the main character, she used shadow magic, because of course she did, and shadow magic was like kind of frowned upon, because of course it was, but it was just, you know, one of those things. And I remember like, I wrote it in my computer class at the time, because there was this like senior that sat next to me. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm like writing a book." She's like, "Oh my god, you write books?" And she was like so cool and like very supportive of me. And I still think about her sometimes. So I hope you're doing good. Thank you for being an awesome senior to me as a baby freshman. Anyway, I'm going to try to put together a timeline of everything I've mentioned up until now and like kind of when I was writing it. I'll put it here in front of my face. And if you think that's messy, we really haven't even scratched the surface yet. Technically, I did not own this or this in high school, but I did own this, and I would have worn this unironically. So, at the same time as all of this, the seeds of my first novel were being planted and bloomed. Get it? You get it? It's flowers. The summer between my freshman and sophomore years, I wrote the first draft of Lost and Found as a warm-up for my first ever NaNoWriMo in November of 2015. Lost and Found is about a teenage spy named Mia Crane who belongs to FOUND, or the Facility of Undercover National Defense, and leads a double life as a teen spy, which she has to hide from her civilian boyfriend, a nerd named Dave, all while saving the world from Lost, the League of Science and Technology. It's got notes of Kingsman, Kim Possible, and also the MCU, specifically projects like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Captain America the Winter Soldier. If you like those kind of things, you might like Lost and Found. It was my first novel. Everything before that would have classified as like a novelette or a novella. The first draft of Lost and Found came out to 50,000 words. The second draft was edited up to 60,000. And then I scrapped all of that and rewrote the whole thing, which came out to about 80,000 words. It's like 84,000 with all of the bonus content that's in the current edition of the book. So this is what it looked like before. I know, shocker, huh? You can still find pictures of this online. I've tried to get this version of the copy off of Goodreads like forever. They're really picky about what they can and can't change. I hate Goodreads. It's so crusty. This is the cover it was published with originally. It was published in May of 2017. These copies are out of print. If you have one, might be worth something someday. maybe hold on to that. It was also around this time that I published and directed my first play, which is The Averagers, the parody of The Avengers, obviously. And it was put on by my local community theater through their youth theater program. So I got to direct it with a bunch of my friends, and it was awesome. It was really like a dream coming true at the time, and I got to check that off of my bucket list. Also, I said the Jonathan Rand thing would come back full circle, so here it is. Wearing the same crown even. Oh my god. He was at where I was for his own private signing, and then like an hour after that I was taking place in a signing for like a whole bunch of independent authors all together, and it was like the perfect opportunity, you know what I mean? So I brought him a copy. It looked like this. And I told him, like, you know, when I was a kid, I saw you at the library and you talked about writing, and that was the reason I started writing, and so I wanted you to have a copy of my work. I cried and he cried, and it was like a really, really sweet moment. He's a really awesome dude. And with that, we're going to Morgan with the NaNoWriMo news update. Morgan? Thank you, Morgan. You know, I actually, I just want to adore this, and I made a whole news logo and everything. Please appreciate the work that I have put into the production value here. Anywho, as I said previously, my sophomore year of high school is when I started participating in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. This is the entire month of November, which is 30 days long. So the goal is to write 50,000 words over the course of those 30 days, which averages out to a total of around 1,667 words per day for 30 days consecutively. I highly recommend this for any writer who is, you know, maybe approaching your first full-length novel. I'm not really sure where to start, not really sure how to keep track of it. November is a great time to attempt this for the first time. I would highly recommend it, especially because you'll have an entire community of people rallying around you. The website to participate is nanowrimo.org. It's free. You can also use it to track your other writing projects, which is a feature they added pretty recently. Even if you're not participating in the November National Novel Writing Season, you can still keep track of your other writing projects that may or may not be around that length. They also run Camp NaNoWriMo, which is in April and July. For these events, you are able to set your own word goal, so it may or may not be 50,000 words that you're shooting for. Maybe you want to try 40,000 words in a month. Maybe you want to try 60,000 or more than that in a month and really push your boundaries. That's a great time to do like an unofficial warm-up for NaNoWriMo. Well, I guess technically that would be an official warm-up for NaNoWriMo. I'm a great reporter. I'm like April O'Neil. That said, November is kind of an inconvenient time to be writing a book just because it is a short month. It's not 31 days, it's 30 days. And also, you know, there's a holiday thrown in there that you may or may not be doing things for. And that's also right when school ramps up again. So, but I've done it for 8 years, so I would recommend it. So as I said previously, my sophomore year of high school was the first year I participated in NaNoWriMo. I also participated in NaNoWriMo during my junior and senior years of high school, in addition to all 4 years of college and 1 year so far after college. I'm going to put them up on the screen now. These are the projects I completed during my first 3 National Novel Writing Months. All 3 of these projects reached completion within the 30 days. Of the 3, Resensere, The Lost Queen is the only one that I have published. The other 2 I have plans to revise. They will be in a very different form than they are as they were when I wrote them originally. I do have a few copies of the first 2 projects I wrote for National Novel Writing Month. They were just given to family and friends. They are not available for purchase anywhere. They're pretty bad, to be quite honest. But I do plan, like I said, I plan to repurpose them. Whether it's in their whole form, like McKenna Rogers and the Trip Through Time, I just plan on, you know, changing some details and trying again. Or The Weight of the World, which is getting a complete revamp, a totally different tone, completely new characters aside from, I think, 2 of them. I don't know when that'll happen, if at all, but I did complete an outline for that. Well, this has been the NaNoWriMo News Update. We're back to you, Morgan. Thank you, Morgan. Like I said, when I was a junior, Lost and Found was published for the very first time. Shortly after that, I began to write its sequel, Operation Olympian. I literally haven't finished it yet. But yeah, I'm working on it. So in the midst of writing Operation Olympian, something else happened. My friend group at the time imploded, and I was left in the wreckage. This was genuinely, and for many other reasons, one of the lowest points in my life. To make matters worse, I was being bullied on top of it by some of those people. Imagine it's your 18th birthday and all of your former friends actively hate you. Some of them going as far as to cyberbully and harass you. So, because of all of that going on, I just couldn't write Lost and Found. Like, I just couldn't get into Mia Crane's head space. I couldn't get into her mindset when I felt like shit all the time. And so I had to stop writing it for a bit. I took a break and instead I wrote 2 other things. So the first is Doing Just Fine, which is my poetry collection. The other is Galaxy. If you're here from Wattpad, I bet you probably didn't expect me to bring it up, but I am, baby. She's part of the journey. She belongs in this video. Firstly, my poetry collection was the way I funneled all of my feelings about the situation into something digestible. I think putting it into words really helped me. I was getting counseling at the time, but even that, like, kind of was not enough to get all of my anger and my sadness and everything else I was going through out, you know, just get it out of my body. And I think writing Doing Just Fine did do that for me. If you've read it, you'll know I was in a pretty dark place at the time, and I really do think that that poetry collection is one of the reasons I'm alive right now. And the other reason is Galaxy. I haven't worn this stuff in so long. Okay. To understand Galaxy and its existence, I have to tell you that from the time I was a senior in high school until about my junior year in college, I was into K-pop. On again, off again, every so often. Mostly BTS, but also Astro. And I still do listen to their music. Like, it's something that's probably never gonna go away. Like, I was in a K-pop club in college. I met a lot of really cool people in there. You know, it's not something I'm ashamed of, but it's just not something that I'm also actively still into. Galaxy was based on a series of connected one-shots I wrote that were each different versions of a soulmate AU, in which every person on Earth has a soulmate, but the way that they were connected to them differed based on their soulmate gene, which was something that they inherited from their parents, but it could also be like recessive, like it depended on what it was. Some of them were common, like having your soulmate's name on your wrist. Others were very rare, such as the ability to hear your soulmate's thoughts, or randomly switch bodies with them. So there were some kind of cool ones in there. So I took all of these one-shots. I think there were like 14 of them, 2 for each member, one where they met and the other being the sequel, and I mashed all of them into one giant book called Galaxy, changing the members of the K-pop group I was writing about into original characters, mixing up some of the soulmate connections from the original stories, and giving a full character to each of their previously nameless reader insert soulmates. And they each had a soulmate gene that connected them to their member of Galaxy, as they also had like hobbies, careers, dreams. Like they were characters, you know, they weren't just blank, lifeless, you know. To this day, it is the longest thing I've ever written, clocking in at just over 150,000 words. It's huge. It's really, really big. It's not the biggest book in the world by far. There are bigger books, but 552 pages. This is the longest thing I've ever written. I think the second longest thing is probably Lost and Found, which is only 80,000 words. And then the third will be the book I'm writing right now, whenever I finish it. It's like 75,000 right now. So yeah, it's huge. This is the only copy that exists. Before you ask, I just got this for me. This is the cover that was on Wattpad as well, because it was on there for a while. I did take it down. But yeah, I also got it because this is the thing that I deemed long enough to be like a satisfying hardcover book. If you want to like find your own fan fictions that you've written, or like other things that you don't want people to read that you want a copy of, use Barnes & Noble Press. If you try to do it through Kindle Direct Publishing, you'll have that ugly not for resale stripe on it, and it like ruins the vibe. But if you go through Barnes & Noble Press, you can get personal prints of stuff, which is, and something else we'll talk about later is also, oh, there's a pretty crow. But yeah, this is a personal print on Barnes & Noble Press, and they do hardcovers with dust jackets, so I would recommend it. Very cool. I am proud of Galaxy, and I'm glad I wrote it because I really do think working on it took my mind off of everything else I was going through at the time, and it may have just saved my life, you know? I know people throw that around a lot, like, oh, like listening to Big Time Rush saved my life, and I don't think you understand the weight of that until you go through it yourself. Everyone has their own anchor. This one was mine. This is the thing that was, you know, tethering me to this planet. And like, it's fiction and it's harmless, and I'm glad that it made people happy while they were able to read it online. But as of right now, it's just something that's going to stay private. It's just mine. So I wrote Galaxy through the end of my senior year of high school, over that summer in between, and for a few months of my freshman year of college. Bringing us to the next stop on my writing journey. Yeah, also here's the timeline. Welcome to college. So, like I said, writing Galaxy bled into the beginning of my college experience. I finished it up in, I want to say, like September or October of my freshman year, which was 2018 to 2019. September was when I re-released Lost and Found with its fancy new cover and some bonus content added. There's like an alternate ending. I think I put in the alternate beginning as well, which is the first chapter I wrote that like led into the whole story, but then when I was rewriting it, I decided it didn't serve the story anymore. In November, I released Doing Just Fine after cutting some poems and organizing everything into a coherent like story arc. So I took all the stuff that was like in the midst of the depressive episode and then kind of like coming out of it at the end, you know what I mean? To like form it into like more of a narrative arc of poetry. And then I added a foreword and the back matter, which, you know, you do with any book. The rest of my freshman year, I worked on Operation Olympian some more and finished my first draft of it finally. I was also editing Resensore at the time to get that ready to publish. I spent a lot of time at the library that year working on homework, writing, doing whatever. It was a weird, fun adventure, like being away from home for the longest I'd ever been. I had done a sleepaway camp a couple of times when I was in middle school. Moving out freshman year, moving across the state, that was like something I'd never done before. And it was scary, but it was exciting. And, you know, I made some friends on my floor. I joined a few clubs. And that's honestly all I could kind of remember writing. And all of the notable writing I could find, aside from a lot of fan fiction and some stuff for my classes. My sophomore year, 2019 to 2020, I had been accepted into the film program at my school, so I was taking more film courses. I wrote the first draft of the aforementioned vampire book. In October, I published Resensore the Lost Queen, which is is a middle grade fantasy novel about a girl named Arya Miller who lives in the borderlands of the magical kingdom of Versenserae with the rest of the mortals, banished from the lush and colorful forests within the Vale. One day, Arya discovers a dark secret about herself and her village, which sends her on a quest to find where she truly belongs before it's too late. So this is Versenserae. This is the original copy. The covers are exactly the same. The only thing that is different about the way it looks now is the spines are a little bit different. Focus on them, not on me, please. There we go. Yeah, so we have some different fonts there, and we also have different back covers with cool stuff. And the new one has a map. The old one did not. So, yeah. Very fun. This was the year that I started making a lot of friends. I also got along really well with my roommates that year. One of them, whom my vampire book is dedicated to, watched Twilight basically every day, which sparked that particular book in the first place. And I'm not complaining, I love Twilight. Guilty pleasure. And then, at the end of the year, everything in my life came to a screeching halt, figuratively and literally. The COVID outbreak started, everyone from school got sent home, and a few weeks after that, my dad passed away. It wasn't of COVID. He had cancer. Yeah, so I honestly didn't think I would bring this up, but it has definitely affected my writing since then. I think it's also probably the reason I've really slowed down since then. It's a big thing in my life that happened, and it's been almost 3 years since then, but it's still something that I think about like every single day. I kind of glossed over it a bit in the high school portion, but when I was talking about when I was being bullied, the other thing that was going on at the time was my dad had just been diagnosed with cancer. So yeah, that was when my friends decided was the best time to make my life miserable, because I already was, and it really sucked. It really sucked. I'm still like working through that trauma on top of all of the other trauma. But yeah, my senior year of high school, he got treated. He went into remission. And it looked like everything was fine. And then my sophomore year of college, like in February, I want to say, so like right before the world shut down, that was when it all came back. Just kind of out of nowhere. And 2020 was without a doubt the worst year of my life. And I know that is the case for a lot of other people as well. We all lost a lot, like as a community, as a country. But yeah, it was a doozy. Dad, he was one of the people, if not the person, who supported my writing journey the most. Like the absolute most. He was the only person in the family that read all my books before they came out. He was the only one that like gave me feedback when I was still working on them. He helped me like make my first LLC to protect my work. He knew a lot of business stuff, and so he was using his knowledge to help me as best as he could. And he also read a lot, so he read my books. And that might also be part of the reason I'm kind of dragging my feet with Operation Olympian, because Lost and Found was the only book that he was able to read. By the time Versenserae was coming out, he was kind of losing his eyesight because of the surgery they did, the tumors, because they were in his brain. So it really affected the way that he lived. And so I was trying to do an audiobook of Versenserae, and then that just, didn't work out. So Lost and Found is the one that he read and gave me feedback on, and it feels like, I want to make it as good as he thought it could be, but I also don't have him here to give me that feedback again. And it just, it's just easier to write other things and kind of run away from it than to take that head on and try to do it by myself. God, I didn't think this video was gonna go there. I miss him a lot. Obviously, every single day. You know, he was one of the people in my life that I was the closest to, that I could actually talk to about anything. And it's definitely affected my writing. Definitely affected my writing. I knew it would come up at some point on the channel. I mentioned him briefly in one of my previous videos, and, you know, I knew it was gonna be relevant at some point, but I figured I would bring it up now. And just, you know, let you know that's where I'm at. So that was the end of my sophomore year. I stayed home for the rest of the summer, and I don't remember a lot of it. I think it's probably just the trauma of it all, but I don't remember anything I worked on during that period of time. I know I played The Sims a lot, just to kind of, like, escape from everything, but I don't remember, like, anything that I was working on. Junior year was 2020 to 2021. It was really weird. So I wrote a ridiculous amount of stuff. I was not only taking a story making class, which was for my film major, it was just basically a fiction writing class, like learning how to do like narrative arcs, that kind of thing, but it wasn't screenwriting. It was just like normal story writing, but it was required for my film courses. And then for my writing minor, I was taking intermediate fiction, which was basically the same class as story making. They were very, very similar. And then I was taking creative nonfiction at the same time. And so I was writing for all three of those classes, which was insane. I was like, you know, burning out on writing, because every week I had to do like a short story, and then like 3 or 4 times that semester for each of those classes I had to write like a bigger piece. So just a ton of writing, just not stuff I like wanted to work on. I do have some of it because some of those short stories are kind of like interesting. I don't know, I might do like a short story collection at some point. I think that would be really neat. But yeah, no current plans for that, but I'm holding on to them just in case. My homework was such a grind that year because 90% of my classes were online. And so I was like super unmotivated, like the most unmotivated I'd been in my entire academic career thus far. All of my homework was due Friday night at midnight, and every single Friday I would be grinding all of it out right up until midnight because I didn't do it the rest of the week because I knew it would only take me like 20 minutes. So I didn't want to do it, put it off the whole week. And I don't even know what I was working on at that point in time because, again, like, I was writing so much, I just didn't have time to do anything for me, you know? Yeah, it sucked really bad. That was kind of when my Red Bull addiction started. I am done with that now. We've closed that chapter of the book of my life. I no longer drink 2 Red Bulls every day. Also, the comic book club I was in closed. It's very sad. My friends and I all stayed together, like we're still friends now, but because someone didn't think to keep it running. What can you do? NaNoWriMo was really, really hard for me that year too. I hated the story I'd committed to. I didn't have enough of a plan. Like I had an outline and it was just kind of like really basic bullet points. I didn't finish the outline. It was like half of an outline. I didn't know how I wanted it to end, so like I kind of got to that point at the end of the outline and I was like, okay, now what? And so I would grind out chapter at a time, like trying to figure out where the story should go, but I didn't care about it and I didn't care about the characters, but I was in too deep because it was already like halfway through the month. I didn't want that to be the first year I lost NaNoWriMo. Do you know what I mean? Like 2020 had already taken so much from me. At that point, I was like, there is no way it is taking this from me as well. I did get the 50,000 words. I did finish, but I have not opened that project since then. And in fact, the next year when I was picking out my nano project for 2021, I didn't even remember what I had written the year before. I was like, I think I did something about witches, but I don't remember what it was, like, at all. And that usually doesn't happen to me with writing projects. I usually, like, you know, kind of remember what I've done, like, but that just got completely buried in my memory because it was, like, that bad. Yeah, I've never been that burnt out before. And on top of everything else, there was a ridiculous amount of roommate drama that year, which was just stressful all the time because it was in the apartment that I was living in, you know? Like, every time I went home, it was there and I couldn't get away from it. And add to that, you know, the fact that I said earlier, my classes were almost all online. I had like one that I had to go to in person. And so I would go to that class and then I was home at the apartment like the whole rest of the year. And that sucked. I was working, but it was just Saturday mornings. So if I wanted to get out of the house, I had to like get up and go somewhere. A lot of times it was just the mall. Like I would just drive 30 minutes to the mall and go get pretzels and go back home. Like, literally just to get out and, like, do a lap. Maybe shop around a little bit, but I was, I would just go in for pretzels and frozen lemonade and then leave. It was affecting my mental health, like, really badly. Junior year sucked. That said, silver lining. I did publish a book that year. It was O Positive, the aforementioned vampire book. It came out that year. It has been my quickest publishing turnaround to date, because I wrote it the year before, and then I just, it didn't really require that many edits. This is the first thing I wrote while I was in college, because the other two things I had written while I was in high school, and so there was a lot of work that needed to be done to that writing to get it up to college quality, you know what I mean? But this started out pretty high quality, and so I didn't really have to do too much to it to get it where I wanted it to be. But anyway, O Positive is a cozy vampire rom-com with a hearty splash of "and they were roommates." Elizabeth Bloodmere is the main character. She is a vampire living in Great City, and she gets a roommate, a human grad student named Ben, who may or may not be onto her secret. So if that interests you, check out the link down below. But yeah, it's my favorite thing I've ever written. Highly recommend. That's the one I recommend to most people, because it's just, objectively the best one. So, finally, my senior year, 2021 to 2022, it was the culmination of everything I'd done up until that point. All of my classes really ramped up. I took 2 fiction filmmaking courses and worked on 3 short films. I also took my final screenwriting course, where I wrote a feature-length screenplay, and took my thesis course, which involved writing a short script. It came out to like 30-ish pages. I outlined a lot of stuff. That was when I outlined the book I'm writing right now, was in April of that year. So like right at the end of the school year. But I didn't actually have a lot of time to write for fun, so I think I needed it. I think I needed the time to kind of recoup, especially after the awful, awful junior year I'd had. And I did do NaNoWriMo that year, which means we're back to you, Morgan. Thanks, Morgan. So in college, the projects I wrote for NaNoWriMo were a little bit different. When I was in high school, all 3 of the projects I completed were complete story arcs within the 50,000 words. They had a complete structure from beginning, middle to end, and I ended when the month ended. In college, this was not the case, aside from O Positive, which I did complete fully in the month. Here are the projects I wrote for those 4 years of the challenge. Aside from O Positive, which I did complete in totality during the month of November, the other projects either did not reach completion or had been started before the month began. In the NaNoWriMo community, we refer to this as being a nano rebel. The way the challenge is supposed to be approached is you start a new book on November 1st, you finish it at the end of the month. Sometimes I would finish the end a couple days after the month, but for the most part I began and finished at the end of the month. These 4 NaNoWriMos, it was completely different because Operation Olympian I had started, like I said, in high school. I had about 20,000 words written before the month started, and so when I did National Novel Writing Month, I tacked on 50,000 more words, getting it to around 70,000 words. The witch book I wrote my junior year, Emma Connor's Grimoire, which is a working title that will never be finished because I'm not writing it again. I didn't even finish that book. I didn't even finish the outline. So I have 50,000 words, but it's not a complete story. The same goes for Meet the Hunters, which I started during the month of November, but didn't finish the story, mostly because it just wasn't working. It was too complicated. And when I do approach it again, I plan to have a better plan going in. Yeah, I really do think it would be better suited to 2 narratives instead of the 4 that I was trying to cram into that book. There are a lot of Hunter siblings, not all of them need their own storyline, but I think having 2 of them that I could bounce back and forth off of would be a good start for the next draft of that story. So I do plan on returning to it, but I didn't complete the story during the month. Well, that's it for now. Back to you. Oh my god, we have breaking news. We have an update from the project I worked on after college for my 8th NaNoWriMo season. I think my mom just pulled in. Oh my god. This will segue so nicely into the next section of the video. And with that new update, we conclude our NaNoWriMo news segment. Back to you, Morgan. Well, we did it, folks. We finally caught up to present day. Oh, God.
Yay!
I hope I didn't, like, blow out my microphone. To be honest, after I graduated college, I was so burnt out. I was afraid I was done, like, accomplishing things. It had been so long since I felt fulfilled by my writing. It had been a couple years since I published a book after years of steadily publishing books. I really didn't think anything could fix it, you know? NaNoWriMo was steadily approaching and I had a solid outline, but my passion was gone. So what was the point? And then, dawning in the distance, I saw him. No, not God. Keeley from the Hobbit movie. I know, completely out of left field. I told you back in the middle school section that Tolkien stuff was gonna come full circle. So yeah, random hyperfixation. Watched all of the Hobbit movies again. Cried. Watched the behind the scenes documentary. Cried some more. Watched the Lord of the Rings movies with my mom. Sobbed buckets. Love those movies. And then I cranked out a 45,000 word fan fiction in 3 weeks, like a month before NaNoWriMo. Here it is. This is the bookkeeper. I wrote it. But so I used Barnes & Noble Press for this as well, just to get a personal print. This is the only one that exists. Do not print my fan fiction. Don't. Don't do it. Yeah, it completely, you know, it ignited my writing passion again, just in time for NaNoWriMo. So Keeley and Aiden Turner, let's be real, might have saved my writing career. That middle school hyperfixation that I buried so long ago came back to save me when I needed it most. And then I did NaNoWriMo. And, you know, I'm still writing that book, so still working on it. I'm, like, almost done with it. It's, like, 75,000 words now. Murder mystery, very fun. I'll talk more about it when it's, like, getting ready to be published. I'll also be looking for, like, beta readers, maybe even people to do, like, advanced reader copies, that kind of thing. If you're interested in those, stick around. So, yeah, this video came out way longer than I thought it would be, but I hope it's given you some insight into my process and not only my successes, but my failures. There's so many of them. So many of them. Look at all the things I dropped in this video that we talked about compared to the 3 that made it to completion. I mean, I guess 4 if you count my poetry collection. Here's the thing. Every time people talk to me about writing, they think I started in high school, and I didn't. They think that Lost and Found is the first thing I ever wrote, and that's not the case either. When new writers and aspiring authors are just getting started, they think it's going to be really easy. They think that they're going to write one book and it'll immediately be perfect and it'll get picked up and it'll be pushed to all of the, you know, major retailers. It'll be a huge success. It'll be a best-selling book, and for a lot of us, that's not the case. You might get lucky. That might happen to you. But if you're like the rest of us, it won't, and you'll have to really, really work on your craft and do all your own marketing and care about your stories because no one else will, you know, until someone does. I wrote dozens of stories, and those are just the ones that we talked about in this video. I'm sure there are plenty that I haven't thought about, that I forgot about, or that got lost to different computers and different systems and lost Gmail accounts, you know what I mean? So keep at it. Writing is like any other art form. You need practice to improve. And without all of my practice, all of my trial and error, all of my character work and failed stories and failed plot lines that didn't work out for one reason or another, I wouldn't be published. Hell, I doubt I'd even still be writing. That's the fun of it. When you fail this much, when you succeed, it feels way better. And these books, my babies, I wouldn't trade any of them for the world, even the ones that are fanfiction. So keep moving forward. Keep writing one word after the other, and before you know it, I'll have one of your books sitting on my shelf. With all of that said, take your meds, drink your water. I'll see you next week.